Hello, this is cjhoyle. Today is Tuesday, November the 9th, 2021, and today I'm here in Springbank Park in the city of London, Ontario. I'm here on the Thames Valley Parkway Recreational Trail, or TVP, and in this video I'm going to be riding this folding bike and giving a narrated tour of riding the TVP all the way from here in Springbank Park into downtown London. Alright, so I'm just starting here at the far west end of Springbank Park, riding underneath of a road called Boler Rd. And in this video I'm going to be riding in the east direction, as I mentioned, into the downtown core of the city of London, a city with a population of about 400,000 people, located right in the smack dab in the center of southwestern Ontario, somewhat fairly equidistant between Lake Huron and Lake Erie, and approximately halfway between Detroit and Toronto. And the city of London is situated right at the fork of the Grand River, where a northern branch and a southern branch come together and form the main branch, which is what we're riding over beside on our left. And in this video, essentially, we're going to be riding all the way to where that fork is, which is a distance of about 8 kilometers. And we've got this lovely multi-use trail to take us there. You can see over on the left, we're just about to pass a large dam. I believe that's there for flood control purposes. Doesn't appear to have any hydroelectric generating capacity or anything like that. I was reading that in the early days, London had quite a few severe floods that devastated a lot of homes and killed quite a few people. And that's, I guess, part of the realities of living on next to a big river. When there's a lot of water coming down, the banks can flood and everything in its path can get kind of destroyed. But by having dams, they can help to regulate the flow. I know on the north branch of the river here in London, there's a fairly large dam, and above it, or sort of, upstream of it, there's a lake called Fanshawe Lake that was created because of that dam. So we're still riding through Springbank Park. It's quite a large park. Seems very nice. I should mention this is my first time visiting the city of London. I'm not a local here, so my knowledge of things is somewhat sparse. I live in Toronto, and I've traveled here for a few days with the exclusive purpose of riding my bike around and exploring the trails here and making a few videos while I'm at it. Over here on the right, we're going past a theme park called Storybook Gardens, which is a children's attraction. You can see there's a white castle over there on the right side. So you may have noticed the names Thames River and London as being reminiscent of somewhere in Great Britain. London, England. The main river that runs through there is called the Thames, and it's not a coincidence that this London has the Thames River running through it. Way back in the late 1700s, John Graves Simcoe, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, which is what we now call Ontario, and he decided that London, this spot right here, which was really, entirely undeveloped by Europeans yet at that point, but he decided that this was going to be the capital of Upper Canada. But it wasn't for another 30 or so years before it actually started to have settlements here, again by the Europeans. Of course, this land had been inhabited for thousands of years by the indigenous peoples of this land. And there's actually an archaeological museum here in London, which they've done quite a bit of research into this land, including a lot of archaeological digs. And apparently they've got artifacts that date human habitation of this area back as far as 11,000 years ago. So the Europeans have a very short span of that, where they've had London here. Back there we just rode past a pump house building, which is located just downstream of where an old dam was across the river. I didn't stop as I was riding past, but here's a clip that I filmed while I was riding past in the other direction, showing what the river looks like there. The dam seems to be mostly destroyed, but from what I understand, at one point there was a fairly substantial dam there that raised the water in the river by quite a bit, to the point where they actually had boats that were able to travel along this portion of the Thames River, and they actually had ferry service that you could take along the river from the community of, which is where Springbank Park is now, which is known as Byron. You could take a ferry ride from there into the heart of the city. Which isn't really what you typically think of as ferry service. Usually ferries are for crossing rivers, not for going up and down them. But I guess back in those days it was before they had railways and good roads, I guess going in a boat was as good an option as any. So the TVP, or Thames Valley Parkway, is a network of trails that follows all three branches of the Thames River, the north one, the south one, and this one, the main one, which is, I guess you might call the west branch of the Thames. And it's fairly continuous for most of the downtown portion of London and sort of beyond. The trail sometimes switches back and forth from side to side. You can see there's a bridge there, but actually that bridge doesn't, if you cross that bridge, it doesn't really continue. The main pathway of the trail actually goes this way, but I'll show you a clip of what it looks like when you're on that bridge that I filmed earlier today when I was getting ready to make this video. I figured it's a good chance to see the river here. So I'm filming this at around 12:45 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. And I'm actually on vacation this week, otherwise I would be working at this time of day. But it's good to see that lots of people have been able to come out this afternoon for a walk. The fall colors are still in effect. I would say that we're probably a little bit past the peak of them, as you can only sort of see yellows and oranges and greens. The reds have kind of faded, but still a very scenic time to See these trails here? And it's actually somewhat unseasonably warm right now. Just gonna go down this pathway here because we'll have a little bit better scenery. That other way I think would just give us a view of a parking lot, where I would rather go this way and see a little bit more of the riverway and other attractions that are along here. So yeah, the high temperature today is supposed to be about 14 degrees Celsius, which is not something you expect for mid-November. Over here on the left, we're just past the London Western Rowing Club. And it seems like this portion of the TVP is called the Terry Fox Parkway. I've also seen signs for it for being the Thames Valley. And hang on a sec, my chain just fell off here, so just bear with me for a second while I stop and put my chain back on. And we're back. Unfortunately, that seems to be the third time that my chain has fallen off so far today. I'm not exactly sure what's causing it. This is not a normal bike that I usually ride. It's a folding bike. And the reason why I'm riding this bike as opposed to my recumbent bikes that I usually ride is because of the transportation method that I took to get here. Did not allow any types of bikes to come along unless they were foldable bikes. So I acquired a folding bike specifically for this trip. I don't expect that I'll keep the bike forever. I bought it used and I plan on selling it at some point when I'm done with it. And the bike was in pretty good working condition when I got it. Good enough so that I was able to ride it home from the location where I bought it. But unfortunately my chain just fell off again, so I guess I spoke too soon there. One sec. All right, and we're back again. So yeah, this is a 6-speed bike. So it has just one big chain ring or sprocket on the crankset, and I haven't really had a bike like that in a really long time. I'm more used to bikes that have a front derailleur, and the front derailleur is usually what keeps the chain from coming off on the front. This park is called Greenway Park. I was mentioning earlier those passenger boats which took people up and down the river as a form of transportation to get into the core. And the main reason how I learned about that was that there was a disaster here back in the 1880s when one of those boats capsized and almost 200 people were killed. There's actually a plaque commemorating that wreckage somewhere along here. And from what the reports say, the boat had been very much overloaded. It had about 600 people on it. And the boats, given that the river was relatively shallow, they had sort of very flat bottoms. They didn't, they weren't able to go very deep into the water, which made them, I guess, fairly tippy. And the interesting thing is that the boat was called the SS Victoria. And the disaster occurred on the 24th of May, which is recognized here in Ontario as Victoria Day. And the other interesting coincidence is that 1 year prior to that, on the previous Victoria Day, this same ship was involved in a collision with another one of the ships. I'm sure they were able to, fix whatever damage happened from that. But interesting that Victoria comes up 3 times in that story. I was also reading that the hull of which that ship was constructed from was actually a hull which came from another ship which predated it. There's the plaque over there on the right for the Victoria boat disaster, 1881. But yeah, the hull which they used to build the Victoria was from another boat which had some other disasters happen to it before it got repurposed. I believe it caught on fire and burned, and then following that it sunk and they had to refloat it. And then the hull, rather than scrapping it, they reused it and formed a new boat with it, which is what the Victoria was. So that boat really seemed to be doomed from the start. But at the time, that was one of the most severe maritime disasters, even though it was just on a shallow river. And it was the 24th of May, which is, it's not like it happened in the middle of winter when the water was cold. I'm guessing that somehow the people got somehow trapped inside of it. Or maybe they got crushed by the ship or something. Hard to imagine. Of course, safety features that we have on boats today wouldn't have been there in those times, things as simple as life jackets. These are the Greenway Park soccer fields that we're now riding through. And I will admit that I am cheating a little bit on this video because I do have a map open which is giving me directions so I don't get lost while I'm filming this ride, and on it I can see a little bit of information about the things which are surrounding me. Of course, when I'm making videos in and around Toronto, I don't do that, and I don't think I really would do that if I was riding on roads. But on a trail like this where there's no vehicles that I'm sharing it with, it's fairly reasonable to do. All right, so we're now going to be passing underneath of a railway bridge here, or a railway tunnel, I guess. This goes under the CN Rail Line's Strathroy subdivision. And there's a portion of the trail here which actually goes back onto the road for a very short section, and then we'll get back onto trail. And yeah, we're getting pretty close to our destination, 1.2 kilometers away. And this is the first of a couple of videos that I'm planning on filming and posting here from London. including riding other portions of the Thames Valley Parkway, as well as a ride of downtown London, which has some new bike infrastructure that was added relatively recently that is pretty interesting, I feel like. You can see that this portion of the trail that's on the road, it actually has some wayfinding sharrows, some little painted bike signals with arrows that show you where to go. And we're just going to make a left turn here. That will take us back onto the pathway again. This road that we're going to cross under is called Warncliffe Road. It's good to see that I'm not the only person out riding their bike on these trails today. So yeah, London isn't a city that I really envisioned that I would be spending my vacation coming to visit, but I have to say I'm thoroughly enjoying it here. Seems like a nice city and not that far away to get to. I traveled here on Go Transit's train service, which they're doing a pilot to come out here to London. They're only doing one train per day in either direction as part of this pilot project. And they've taken an existing line, which is the Kitchener line, and they've extended it. And it basically follows the same path that you would take if you were to come here by Via Rail train, but the price is less and you don't have to buy your ticket in advance. And even though you can't bring a conventional bike or a non-folding bike with you on the train, it is a lot more convenient in my opinion than the way that you have to take bikes when you're traveling by Via Rail. So here we're just going to pass over the branch of the Thames, the South Branch, and over there to our left is the fork where the three branches come together. Let me just show you a clip that I filmed earlier showing that. And from here we're going to continue in the east direction into downtown London. I'm going to be joining a road here called King Street, just to get us into what feels like the downtown of this small city. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed joining me on this narrated tour through London, Ontario. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.